Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How do you do today? I'm doing good, thank you. Today marks the 30th anniversary of the USA officially celebrating Martin Luther King Day. It is only right I begin with an excerpt from his speech, that very famous speech called "I Have a Dream." But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society, exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. 47 years later, and these words still ring true today. I am not a preacher. I am not a revolutionary. But I would like to share my story with you today. My story begins in 1982, December 23rd, in a hospital called Baragwanath, in a township called Soweto, a township created in 1963 by the apartheid government during the Group Areas Act, when they decided black, white Indians should no longer live together. Shortly after I was born, I moved to the Transkei, today known as the Eastern Cape. At the time, the Transkei was an independent Bantustan, as they call it, an independent country not part of South Africa, as the apartheid system decided that Xhosas, Zulus, Tswanas, Pedis should not be part of the white South Africa, but rather have their own independent states and be ruled by their puppet leaders. Lucky for me, I had a grandmother who was very close to that so-called puppet leader. So for me, it was okay. I never grew up with my grandfather, but in 1990, just before his release, my parents told me that we would be visiting him. And so they told me we would visit him in jail. And I said, okay. And the picture I had was a jail, a common picture, concrete, steel bars. But when we arrived on that day, it was a house, a beautiful house, a house with a pool, VCR at the time, things that I didn't have at home. And I thought, wow, there were even chefs. And we even watched a movie I'll never forget, The Never Ending Story. And we met this man, that was my grandfather. And yes, he was a lovely man, very happy to see his family. And that was the first time I thought to myself, when I grow up, I want to go to jail. Because clearly jail is the place to be. Little did I know that he was already being prepared to be released. Less than a month later, he was released. And I remember the joys, the happiness that the whole country experienced when we walked down that street on that fateful day. In 1993, I was living in Soweto with my parents. And the old man, I hadn't seen him since we met him that day of release. Living in Soweto in a house today, which is a museum. And he sent a driver to come and fetch me. And I was alone because when you finish school, you finish around about 2 in the afternoon, got home at 3. Parents only get home 5, 6, maybe 7. So he sent the driver to come and fetch me. And he told me, oh, I've been sent by a grandfather. And I said, no, sorry, I can't go with you. And the man just looked at me in shock. He said, are you an idiot? Do you know who your grandfather is? I said, listen, I really don't know. I know him, but I don't really know him. So I'm sorry, I cannot go with you. And he just continued to say, oh my God, I can't believe I've been sent by this man. Do you know your grandfather? And he went on and on and on. And I said, listen, I'm sorry. Eventually, the man got irritated and left. So eventually, when my father came later that day, I told him what had transpired. And he said, okay, if the man comes again, go with him. And so the man came back the very next day, and I went with him. And that is when I moved in to stay with my grandfather. And so I moved to the suburbs and experienced a new world altogether. A world with a driver, a chef, a gardener, a nice house, just me and the old man. It was tough, I won't lie, adjusting to this new world, because all my grandfather was concerned about was education, was school. And that was the basis of our conversation. Time went by, and in 2000, I got an opportunity to take my first trip to the USA. And so we went to Disney World, and in Disney World, I remember we were waiting for a ride, you know, there's long lines usually. And, you know, as you conversate, oh, so where are you from? Oh, no, I'm from South Africa. Oh, wow, really? How big do the lines get there? And I said, oh my God, I have no idea. I don't work at the zoo. You know, I'm not a game ranger. Sorry, but I really have no idea. And so he looked at me in shock. But anyway, so I traveled with my grandfather, with the family, and everywhere I went, and I would tell people where I was from, they would ask me, how's the crime? The crime is terrible. I said, no, it's not that bad, actually. No, do I need a bodyguard to come there? I say, no, I mean, if me, the son of a former president, does not need a bodyguard, why would you need a bodyguard? And they would ask me, how are the animals? Are they beautiful? And I said, I guess. And everywhere I went, these were the only two questions that people asked me when I told them I'm from South Africa. So in 2009, there was the 46664 concerts in New York City. The 46664 concerts were concerts that my grandfather initiated to support the fight against HIV/AIDS, to raise money and awareness to fight this epidemic, which I have lost both my parents to this epidemic. And that is when it hit me. And I was with my cousin at the time, Kweku, and I said, Kweku, we have to do something about this. For the past, I don't know, 7, 8 years, every time we travel abroad, people are asking us the same question. We need to do something. We need to change this image of Africa. And so we went back home, invited some of our friends. I invited about 4, Kweku got 5. And 30 people showed up at this initial meeting. And we realized that this image of Africa that is so misconstrued today is not something that was unique about me and Kweku, but was in the minds of the youth, of the African people in general. And so after 1, 2, 3 meetings, we decided this would be an NGO, and the name would be Africa Rising, because we needed to show that Africa is taking control of its own destiny. We needed to let the world know that Africa is a place where one can do business. We needed to let people know that you can come to Africa with your family and have an amazing holiday and see things that only you would read about in books. And so we continued developing Africa Rising. Africa Rising is a catalyst in which we see ourselves creating a new breed of young Africans that will empower themselves to develop the continent from within. Develop the continent from within, raising the pride and the confidence of young Africans so that when they travel, when they engage with travelers who have come to visit us, they will talk about Africa with a certain pride and confidence. Africa Rising would stand for progress. Africa Rising is an organization that wants to see a new generation of African leaders who are accountable, who are responsible, and who put the needs of their people first before themselves. And this is what Africa Rising is really all about.